Boulder, Colorado, police say at least 8 people were injured, one critically, at an outdoor mall during a pro-Israel march. The FBI says it is investigating a targeted terror attack and have a suspect in custody.
Dade police say that they received reports that a man had a weapon and was setting people on fire. Let's check in with NBC's Alice Barr. She reports live this morning from Washington. Good morning, Alice.
Good morning, Danita and Dave. Just a terrible story this morning. Authorities say the marchers that appear to have been targeted gather weekly to bring awareness to the Israeli hostages still held in Gaza, part of a growing list of troubling attacks tied to that deadly conflict. This morning, a painful recovery for 8 victims and an entire community after investigators say a man used a makeshift flamethrower and shouted "Free Palestine" during an attack in Boulder, Colorado, on a march calling for the return of Israeli hostages still held in Gaza.
It is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
Videos from the scene show a man shouting and waving bottles filled with some kind of liquid. Authorities now identifying the suspect as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Solomon. 2 senior law enforcement officials say he's an Egyptian national and that while the investigation is in the early stages, he appears to have acted alone. Police arrested him at the scene.
And they immediately ran into a chaotic situation where a man was throwing Molotov cocktails and using other devices to hurt people.
Witnesses joined in, rushing to help the victims between the ages of 52 to 88, some with very serious burns.
I was just like, how can I help? And they had like really bad burns all up on their legs. And then I went over to this other grass area that was like right by the front entrance. And there were some people, there was another lady on the ground with really bad burns on her legs, just like screaming.
The attack follows the deadly shooting less than 2 weeks ago of 2 Israeli embassy staff members in Washington, D.C., after which investigators say the suspect shouted that he did it for Gaza. And as the war there between Israel and Hamas drags on, both anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim hate crimes are on the rise. And senior White House officials say President Trump has been briefed on the attack as Colorado officials, including the governor, condemned the violence, saying the suspect should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Dave and Danita.
All right, Alice Barr reporting live from Washington. Thank you. Also this morning, the Cleveland Jewish Federation, they released a statement saying in part, quote, "We pray for the speedy and complete recovery for those injured in this cowardly act of hate. And also with the Jewish community in Boulder, Colorado, our thoughts are with them at this unthinkable time," end quote. We will continue to update you on air throughout the morning. We also have more information for you on our website.
Throughout this enhanced immigration enforcement operation, ICE and our federal partners targeted the most dangerous alien offenders in some of the most crime-infested neighborhoods of Massachusetts. Our efforts resulted in the arrests of 1,461 criminal alien offenders. 277 of those offenders have been ordered removed from the United States by a Justice Department immigration judge.
If sanctuary cities would change their policies and turn these violent criminal aliens over to us, into our custody, instead of releasing them into the public, we would not have to go out to the communities and do this. Boston's my hometown, and it really shocks me that officials all over Massachusetts would rather release sex offenders, fentanyl dealers, drug dealers, human traffickers, and child rapists back into the neighborhoods. 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, where we ran an operation where ICE officers were doxxed. So let's just say that again. People are out there taking photos of the names, their faces, and posting them online with death threats to their family and themselves. So I'm sorry if people are offended by them wearing masks, but I'm not going to let my officers and agents go out there and put their lives on the line and their family on the line because people don't like what immigration enforcement is.
It should be no secret by now that you will continue to see all of our special agents and officers in your communities conducting daily enforcement actions 24/7.
Prices at this black hair salon in the US were already climbing thanks to inflation and rising rents. But now the Trump administration's tariffs mean both customers and stylists are feeling even more pressure. The import levies on products many black women consider everyday essentials are starting to hit hard.
All of the beauty supply stores are likely to be affected. The budding industry of Black-owned beauty supplies are going to be affected more immediately and more adversely because they did not have the resources, many of them, to stock up on the supply of products in anticipation of this increase, the way some of the stores that have been in business for a longer period of time are able to do.
Many of the products used at salons like these are imported from China, which was hit by a whopping 145% tariff back in April. A US court has since blocked Trump's levies, but the administration says it will appeal the decision. For a lot of Black women, hair care isn't just about money, it's about navigating beauty standards.
For women of color, their hair is a reflection of their everyday life. So they want to be as professional and polished as possible, being that they work very significant jobs, nurses, lawyers, doctors, teachers. So them having a professional look is important.
Import taxes on China have been dropped to 30%, while negotiations between Beijing and Washington continue. It's a figure that some still consider too high and that risks keeping potential clients out of the salon.
And finally, thousands gathered in West Hollywood for the annual Pride Parade, filling the streets with vibrant costumes, floats, and a strong spirit of advocacy. We leave you with this report. Thank you for watching.
Shifting focus for now, it's been a tense weekend in Paris. PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, held a victory parade in the French capital a day after beating Inter Milan 5-0 to win the Champions League. Celebrating the historic win, Luis Enrique and his players went on an open-top bus with thousands of fans lining up the streets. As the bus stopped for a photo opportunity, pyrotechnics were set off behind the players, with the colors red, white and blue drifting through the air. But mayhem and violence also unfolded in Paris over the weekend as celebrations turned into clashes with the police. 2 people died, a large number got injured, over 500 people were arrested by the French police. Bus shelters were smashed, projectiles hurled at riot police who fired tear gas and water cannon to push back the surging crowds. According to the French Interior Ministry, a 17-year-old was stabbed to death in a southwestern town during a gathering to celebrate the Parisians' victory, while a woman riding a scooter died after she was hit by a car in the southwest of Paris. The French Interior Ministry added that 491 people were arrested in the capital itself. Flares, fireworks, torched cars, smashed bus shelters marked a chaotic night in France.
We're really not in favor of that violence on Champs-Élysées. We're a family, I even have children, and I wasn't able to bring them to the Champs-Élysées last night because you never know. So sure, we're not very proud of some people who are just looking for that.
Authorities had anticipated wild celebrations, and to manage the situation, over 5,000 police officers were reportedly deployed. The police used tear gas after the celebrations turned chaotic. Security was tightened around the iconic Paris Avenue. A day after the incident, the police used metal security barriers and vehicles to block off the Champs-Élysées and surrounding streets.
Sudan is in the thick of the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with children said to be the hardest hit. The conflict in the country is in its third year and there is no end in sight. Of the nearly 15 million displaced, more than half are children. More than 30 million people need humanitarian assistance. With malnutrition and illness rampant, an estimated 3.2 million children under the age of 5 are projected to suffer from acute malnutrition in 2025. A United Nations report highlighted a 21% increase in grave violations against children in 2023 when the civil war in the country began. The report placed several entities on the blacklist for killing and even maiming children and for carrying out attacks on schools and hospitals.
Before the war, we had 7 million children out of school. Since the war, we have 17 million children who are not in schools. Again, if we look at the data before the war, we knew that around 3 million children are acutely malnourished. Now, since the war, almost close to 4 million children acutely malnourished.
Child abuse has worsened since the outbreak of war. Reports showed children have been forcibly recruited as fighters. Cases of sexual abuse and slavery have also increased.
We verified tens of cases of children who were forced by the RSF to join the conflict. Some of them have returned to their families and some were killed in the conflict. Many were kidnapped. The scale of the violence is large and scary. We need huge collaboration in order to prevent a bigger crisis.
Famine has already taken hold in at least 5 locations. 5 more areas are on the brink of famine, with 17 others at risk. With the rainy season approaching, concerningly, 7 of these localities are also vulnerable to flooding. Funding for life-saving services is critically low, threatening to halt essential health, nutrition, education and protection programs for children and families. UNICEF has appealed for $1 billion for its response in Sudan in 2025. That amounts to just $76 per person for the entire year, only 26 cents per day to deliver essential support to those in need. Hopes of a way out of this darkness still remains a far cry.
Intolerable. That's how the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has described the situation in Gaza. Speaking in Glasgow, he reiterated the need for an urgent ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave. His comments came after health officials and international organisations say at least 31 people died and around 200 were wounded on Sunday. Witnesses say Israeli forces fired towards crowds near an aid site run by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a group backed by Israel and the US.
So look, the situation is intolerable in Gaza and getting worse by the day, which is why we are working with allies to be clear in saying it's intolerable, to be absolutely clear that there needs to be a ceasefire, to be absolutely clear that humanitarian aid needs to get in at speed and at volumes that it is not getting in at the moment. It's causing absolute devastation. And, of course, to continue our work to secure the release of hostages who've been held for a very, very long time. We're working closely with allies on that and we'll continue to do so.
Hospitals have been overwhelmed with victims, with Doctors Without Borders saying people reported being shot at from all sides. Israel's military denies shooting directly at the crowd.
Iran has hit back at a recent International Atomic Energy Agency report that claims it has increased its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. The content of the report issued by the IAEA is mostly repetitive and it exaggerates some technical issues. We have no doubt that this report has been prepared under pressure by some certain European countries. We are not happy at all to see Western countries damage the reputation and the position of an important international body like that. The report says Iran now has more than 408 kilos of 60% enriched uranium. We are aware the Director General and the IAEA as a whole have been subject to pressure to prepare this report. Of course, this won't justify preparing a fully biased and politically motivated report against a member country. The report comes as the US seeks to reach a deal with Tehran over its nuclear program.